I am so confident if you do even at least some of these, you are going to be in a completely different place a year from now. These habits I feel so passionately about are the key to genuinely changing your life. And the thing is, they're not meant to feel overwhelming or like this big life overhaul. They're just meant to move the needle gradually towards your dream life, whatever that may be. Hello, welcome to the video. Today we are going to be talking about soft habits to build your dream life in 2026. And this is a video I wanted to make because I don't know about you, but I personally get very overwhelmed with the prospect of doing like a huge life reset, this big goal setting session at the end of the year. Don't get me wrong, I am a hardcore resolutioner. And you know what? If I'm being honest, if I'm reflecting on what has actually moved the needle for me, it's never when I sit down and kind of strategize my goals and do this huge life reset. I feel like what has genuinely made a change in my life are like these small micro habits that compound over time and have kind of pushed me towards a life that I would say feels very fulfilling. I feel like it looks good on the outside, but it also genuinely feels good on the inside. And this is a place I honestly sometimes questioned whether or not I would arrive at. And actually, when I was preparing this video, I was reading some of my old journal entries, and honestly, man, some of them are depressing. It is crazy to me reading these old journal entries because I just remember being so miserable and so unfulfilled and having no idea what the next steps were for me to take in order to build a life that felt better, that felt meaningful, that brought joy. And now, when we fast forward a couple of years, I feel like I could not have conceived of the life I have now. I was single, I'm engaged now. I have a job that brings me so much joy and fulfillment. And like I said, it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen because I did like a year-end reset and I was like, I'm gonna change my life starting January 1st. Over the years, I've collected these kind of habits that have guided me towards this life. And that is what I wanted to share with you today. Because if you're anything like me, you get really excited and motivated this time of year. But when I actually sit down and put the work in to strategize and write out all my goals for the year and do this big life reset, I feel like I get so overwhelmed when it gets to the point of action. I am just over it. I'm exhausted and I don't actually make any progress towards my goals. So if that resonates with you at all, this video is the perfect video for you. These habits I feel so passionately about are the key to genuinely changing your life. And the thing is, they're not meant to feel overwhelming. They are just meant to move the needle gradually towards a fulfilling life, whatever that looks like for you. So, without further ado, let's get into it. I've made some notes. I'm going to pull them up now, and we will go through my soft habits for changing your life, building your dream life in 2026. 5 habits that I've written out here that we're going to go through, and these are habits for me personally that I feel like have made the biggest difference in my life. And I am so confident if you do even at least some of these, you are going to be in a completely different place a year from now. So let's get into it. Habit number 1 is going to be writing out your values. And I feel like this is such a powerful habit that works really well for people who get overwhelmed with the prospect of goal setting. Usually I'll aim to write down like 5 or 10 values, things that like I want to guide my life's purpose, things that I want to be integrated in my work, in my relationships, in my hobbies. Writing down these values, I feel like helps subconsciously program your mind to like seek out opportunities that would be aligned with these values. And actually, I'm gonna pull out my journal from 2023. Like I said, I was at a point in my life where I was feeling very unfulfilled, and I actually didn't know the next steps to take that would bring me a sense of fulfillment. Like, you're in that like fresh post-grad era, and you're like out there looking for your job, and it seems like you could go in infinite directions, and I was very unsure of what direction would lead me towards happiness and greater fulfillment. And I'll talk a little bit more about decision making later on in the habits, but I find this so interesting when I go back and read the values that I wrote out in January 2023, Number one was autonomy. This is something I was struggling with so much in placement. I felt like I would feel greater fulfillment if I had high autonomy in my role. Creativity was number two on there. Influence was number three, and you can argue some of these are not really values, maybe like guiding principles, aspirational traits, you could say. But anyway, I had autonomy, creativity, influence. Then for number four, I put like physical fitness and performance. If you don't know, I was a varsity runner in college, and I was really struggling to navigate the transition from like my life being about competition to like my life being about work, and where does competition fit within that. Number five, I put excellence, and number six, I put connection. This is very telling to me and a reflection of like what I was currently struggling with in that phase of my life. I feel like just writing this down kind of automatically framed the way I looked at job postings and the opportunities I was seeking out. And I feel like autonomy relates a lot to work specifically. Creativity, not so much. I feel like I don't get a sense of fulfillment from being creative in a role. Like for me, creativity is more like crafting YouTube videos and editing and social media. That's more what I find fulfilling, although there is an element of creativity in being a dietitian that I really enjoy. Influence, this one's interesting and maybe not necessarily a value, but clearly something that I've been able to build into my life now, or something that I'm actively working towards. It feels so cocky to say that I wanted to be influential, but I kind of think of it not in like a cringy influencer sense, but more like the impact I have on others, like having that positive impact to help them change their lives for the positive. I do that almost every single day in my practice, where I'm able to support people in reaching their goals. Fitness and performance I kind of talked about, and excellence. I feel like this was an important value for me to write down, because I've always been the person who wants to do everything well, and that has steered a lot of my decisions in my career, because when I was in corporate, I didn't have this drive to be excellent at what I was doing the same way that I do when I'm counseling. So just like acknowledging that it's important for me to be motivated to perform at the highest level. And if I'm not feeling that sense in my role, then there's some misalignment with my values. To me, if I was living my like ideal life, all of these values would be integrated into my daily habits and routines. I feel like writing these down kind of reprograms your subconscious to look for opportunities that are in better alignment with these. And I didn't get there immediately, but I feel like there were kind of different things I integrated into my life that allowed me to be in a place now where, looking back at these values, I'm like, holy, I'm there. Like, I'm doing it, I'm living these, and it feels freaking good. I didn't set a single goal that could have led me to these. Like, I didn't break these down further into like, I want autonomy. What does that look like? It was just an exercise in like reflecting on what I wanted some of my guiding principles to be. That is tip number one. Super simple. Just write out 5 to 10 values or guiding principles that you want to inform your decisions in life. Stick them somewhere safe. Revisit them in a couple months, and you will be shocked the ways in which you start to align yourself with these values. Because I think like a core reason why a lot of people may feel unhappy or unfulfilled is that they know on a conscious or subconscious level that they are not living in alignment with their values. There is some kind of disconnect there. So doing this exercise just helps you gain that clarity and be a little bit more conscious about aligning your day-to-day with those principles. Okay, moving on. Habit number two. Habit number two is more so a thought exercise than a habit, and that is to reframe your relationship with work. I feel like we live in an era where there's this narrative online that you have to quit your job in order to live your dream life, and I certainly subscribe to that mentality. I felt like there was no possible way for working a 9-to-5 and my dream life to coexist together, but I'm gonna hold your hand when I say this. The secret to living your dream life is not quitting your job. Instead, I think it's more productive to go through your list of values and outline the ones that you are either currently getting from work or that you would like to get from work. I genuinely don't believe that you're going to find a job that helps you live out every single one of your values. I used to believe that, certainly. I feel like I had this like millennial concept in my mind that like a dream job exists that was going to fulfill almost every like need I had in my life. I recognize now that that is like not a realistic expectation of work. I think it's more productive to reflect on the values that are important for you to derive from work. Like when I look at that list, autonomy is obviously related to work. And when I was working my corporate job, I felt like I had very little autonomy, whereas in the position I have now, I feel much more able to live out that value of autonomy, being able to make my own decisions and direct my learning and my practice. That for me is very fulfilling. So that is one aspect of reframing your relationship with work, recognizing the ways in which it can help you live out your values. Because if you were to remove that, I wager a guess that when you look at the values on your list, you would have a hard time living those out. Work is such a tool to give us meaning and purpose in our life. And I think you're missing out on that opportunity if you completely reject the idea that you may have to work. Just putting that out there. If you are someone who's really struggling with this, like you've written out your values and you're thinking about your current job and there is just no overlap there, then I have a life-changing book recommendation, and that would be Designing Your Life by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. This book I listened to on audiobook, and I feel like it was instrumental in shaping the way I think about work and my career. This book is all about the concept of design thinking and thinking about your life the way a designer would. So how do you create purpose, meaning, joy in your day-to-day life and in your career, using concepts that designers or programmers would use. Super interesting, and I think what I found the most useful, at least for that phase of my life, was the concept of prototyping. So when we're stuck in a place where we're feeling like very unfulfilled in our job, in our career, we imagine these different like avenues we could go down. So for me, if I was feeling like low autonomy in my job and that was impacting my sense of fulfillment, I might think that starting a business, starting my own practice could bring about joy or fulfillment. I might think, becoming a YouTuber or influencer may also give me that sense of autonomy and fulfillment. I might think going back to school, doing my PhD and working in research was another way to live out that value. Like there are many different paths that I could go down that I imagine would give me a better sense of fulfillment. So how do I pick which one is the right path for me rather than just getting stuck in indecision or analysis paralysis? The concept of prototyping is having conversations with people who have gone down that path, like finding people who are in those careers or positions that you think you might want to be in and asking them a lot of questions about their day-to-day lives, what they like, what they don't like the reality of that career path and the steps they took to get there, any advice that they would have for you in your position. Like actually have real life human conversations with these people to get a sense of what path is the best path for you. Because you may have an idea in your mind that like entrepreneurship is the dream for you and that's what you want to work towards. But if you actually speak to entrepreneurs themselves, it's going to highlight like their challenges and you'll get a sense of like, are those problems you want to be dealing with on a daily basis? I think this is a hugely powerful tool and actually can lead to job opportunities by just having these conversations with people. In a sense, it's a way of networking. And if you're sitting there thinking like, why would these people talk to me? People are incredibly flattered that you are interested in an aspect of their life, in their career. Chances are, if they have achieved any sort of success, they are proud of their career development. And I think you would be surprised at how generous people are with their information. Any connection I reached out to, I had some kind of loose tie, like someone was a guest lecturer in my master's. I reached out and said, like, you were a guest lecturer. These are the components of your career I'm interested in learning more about. And she, in that session, connected me with a couple other people that were kind of aligned with my interests. And she referred me for a job based on that conversation. And that was not the goal of the conversation at all, but she referred me for a job, and that was my first job out of school. So these conversations are helpful for you to get a picture of like what your career trajectory could look like, what those next steps are. Also helpful for making connections, and if you are lucky, it could also help you land a job. So highly recommend that book, and specifically the concept or the chapter where they talk about prototyping. Moving on to habit number 3. Habit number 3, and this is actually a habit, is all about defining your me time. I think it's very important to define what that time is and how you plan on filling that time, because a mistake I feel like a lot of people make, and I'm totally guilty of this, is like writing out my goals or my resolutions for the year, and there's like 10 of them, and I don't possibly have a way to work on those goals from week to week when I think about the fact that 40 to 50 of my hours are taken up by my job. Those hours in the week are gone. So I need to get clear on the time I can dedicate to pursuits that are meaningful to me and give me that sense of fulfillment that I'm not getting from my job. So creativity is a big one. I know that that's not something I'm getting from work in the way that I get it from YouTube or from other crafts and hobbies and artistic things that I do in my personal life. I feel like one of the most beneficial habits you can adopt is defining your me time within the context of your weekly schedule and allocating specific goals or tasks to that time, if that makes sense. So when I look at my weekly schedule, I usually have about 2 hours I can dedicate to some sort of meaningful pursuit before work. And I tend to focus on fitness and performance before work because that is when my energy is the best for it. Whereas in the evening, I often have private practice patients, but if I don't, I'm more apt to do something creative like video editing or scripting, something like that. Even when I'm tired after work, I still have the energy for that, whereas I don't necessarily have the energy to push myself physically. Some activities I do not get to do on a daily basis. That is just real adult life. And so it's beneficial to look at your week as a whole and decide when you're gonna slot those in. So filming a YouTube video, I like to film when the sun is out. I need to look at my weekend, my Saturday, Sunday. When does it make the most sense for me to film? And then editing is one of those things that can just fit in kind of when I have free time. If I was to add another thing on top of that, there is not physical time in my schedule or one of these other things I'm gonna have to sacrifice because there are only so many balls I can juggle. It is not productive for me to set a goal like training for a marathon when realistically I'm not gonna be able to fit in long runs. And if I decide, no, like this is the year I'm gonna train for a marathon, either I'm sacrificing my performance because I know that I don't have the time or the energy to commit to a rigorous, like high performance marathon training schedule, or I'm sacrificing the second job or consistency with YouTube because of the confines of my current schedule. So I think that's an incredibly productive and useful habit. It helps you be realistic with your goals, intentional with your time, and like regimented with your schedule outside of work. Like it's so easy to fritter that time away if you haven't allocated that time to something. I had a coach that used to say, what doesn't get scheduled doesn't get done. And this is so freaking true. It's easy to get home from work and start scrolling on your phone, black out, and like 2 hours later, you're still scrolling on your phone. That is maybe not necessarily time well spent. Not saying you can't do a doom scroll here and there, but you're less likely to if you've got a sense of purpose and you've allocated that time to kind of fulfilling that purpose. Okay, habit number 4. I'm gonna contradict myself a little bit here, but habit number 4 is doing your monthly resets. And I have put it as number 4 because I think it's important to define your me time so that you're really narrowing your focus down and you're quite clear on the time you have to allocate to different goals and what your priorities are. Like you are going to have to make sacrifices. So doing those steps first helps define your priorities. And then from there, it can be helpful to do resets or track your progress on a month-to-month basis. For me, financial security, stability is like up here when it comes to my dream life, not in the sense that like I want to be able to afford nice things. It's actually just like a sense of safety that allows me to like go out and be creative, that allows me to show up better at work. Because when I have that financial stress, like nothing else matters. Like it is paralyzing to me. So for me, the number one thing I'm tracking is my finances month to month. I track all my spending, but I don't do it every single day. I do it like twice a month on payday, and that feels very realistic for me. Maybe you're a type A and you get off on tracking every little thing, like your friggin' water intake for the day. Like if that is you, all the power to you. But if you're someone who honestly gets overwhelmed by not only the prospect of like doing the goals themselves, but like tracking the progress, I urge you to not get caught up in the details, to just pick one thing to track at a regular interval, whether that's monthly or quarterly, whatever makes sense for that goal. Just focus on tracking the most meaningful outcome to you. Pick your thing, whatever it is that you want to track or reset that is like tying in all your goals together. Okay, last but not least, habit number 6 is something that I picked up from the book The Artist's Way, and that is morning pages. And this is for my girlies who, again, suffer from overwhelm. Maybe you have a constant running to-do list of like all the things you need to do or want to accomplish to like push yourself further with your goals, and you get into such a state of overwhelm, it like paralyzes you. Morning pages is something that I find incredibly helpful. It is essentially just, I open up a Google Doc. You can do it in a journal with a pen and paper, but I open up a Google Doc and I word vomit. Similar to journaling, but like just generally unstructured gibberish. Just like get it all out there, put it down on paper, release it from your system, and do that for like 15 or 20 minutes in the morning. One of those mornings where you wake up with just like that heightened anxiety and overwhelm. I feel like just doing this almost like brain dump of your thoughts and not trying to like corral them into a coherent like plan is really helpful for overcoming that overwhelm. In that book, the author talks about like other benefits to doing this aside from just like reducing your mental clutter. Like this is something that's beneficial for people who are stuck in their creative process, but even if you're not inherently a creative person, you just feel like you have a lot of that mental clutter and overwhelm. This is a super important habit, and you can do it as often as you want or as infrequently as you want. For me, I feel like it's very useful for me to do it on the weekends because honestly, I struggle without structure. Like if I have a whole day to myself that is unstructured, I am apt to like get very overwhelmed with the prospect of filling that time and prioritizing all the different things I need to do. So I feel like this is incredibly helpful for me to just start off the day on the right foot. The goal isn't to have any like list or plan at the end of it. It's really just to get your ideas out on paper. I feel like it can be a lot more productive than journaling in like the classic sense, just because there's not that expectation on yourself to like write a perfect journal entry, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know about you, but sometimes I imagine other people reading my journal and like it influences the way I write. Morning pages is just like word vomit, and it feels good. And that about wraps up my life-changing habits. Those are my 6 habits for building your dream life in 2026. If you watch this video to the end, my hope is that you do not feel overwhelmed. You feel like these are realistic things you can integrate into your life to give you a sense of clarity and kind of move the needle towards building your dream life without doing this huge, overwhelming life reset. That is my hope. That is my goal. Let me know in the comments, which of these tips do you think was the most useful? What could you see yourself implementing or integrating into your life? Let me know in the comments below. I am very curious. Okay, have a wonderful rest of your week. Have a happy new year, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.